Hello, y'all, and welcome to the 12th episode of 10 Years in Bed, a mental health podcast for the mentally ill by the mentally ill. I'm your host, Alison, and today I'm going to be discussing with you guys 30 things that I've learned by 30, as I just turned 30 a couple days ago. There are going to be different sections within this podcast episode of different things that I've learned, so I'm going to talk about relationships, mental health and autism, addiction, food and nutrition / fitness, and goals. So the first thing in the relationship segment of this is, number 1, do inner child work to undo childhood trauma. Our childhood shapes who we are on such a deep level, and it affects everything, all our relationships, how we operate as adults. So it's very, very important to kind of undo the damage that was done to you throughout childhood. I've personally seen this unfold negatively in a lot of friends and past relationships with people who were not really willing to do the work and trying to heal themselves, and it just impacts you so negatively in such a deep way. I think I'm going to do an entire podcast episode on it because it's not something that I can just cover really, really quickly. Number 2, learn about human behavior and use this knowledge to evaluate past traumas and past relationships so that you can begin to understand people's behavior and learn how to weed them out. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's like the autism or the ADHD or like what that is there, but I've always been very interested in psych books, understand why people operate the way that they operate. I think it has something to do with the autism, mostly because I just want to understand people better because I don't necessarily. And I found that reading books and listening to podcasts on human behavior has helped me greatly understand why people operate the way that they operate. And then honestly, it's just helped me weed people out. And as you progress through life, you do not want to keep people in your life that no longer serve you or kind of exacerbate whatever you've got going on. 3, call people out on shitty behavior in a productive way that either enables them to be introspective or to help them grow. This is something that I actually learned very recently. And I was talking to a friend of mine who didn't realize that they were gaslighting me. And it was kind of like a very narcissistic situation. And when I kind of told them how they made me feel, they responded by making it all about them and didn't address what was actually going on, and then continued to gaslight me. And I have been gaslit a lot in past relationships, so now I have the ability to kind of recognize what's happening. And normally within this particular relationship, they are very, I would say, not particularly able to be communicative effectively. And I was able to call them out on their behavior. And when they tried to kind of gaslight me again, repeatedly, I was like, no, you need to realize that this is what's going on here. This is what you're doing. This is how you're making me feel. These are my feelings. I feel this way because of how you delivered the information to me. And it ended up resulting in me feeling really proud of myself for sticking up for myself, because within this particular relationship, I always felt like they left me kind of feeling like a doormat. And that's something that I was no longer willing to put up with, and then decided to cut them out of my life. It was a particularly hard conversation. That being said, I felt like it led them to being a little bit more introspective about how they communicate, their behavior, how they deliver messages. And I think that there's value in that because this particular person needs to learn how to communicate more effectively and be less narcissistic, if we're being so for real. But that's for another day. 4, stop begging for people to love you and go where you are wanted as you are. Throughout my entire life, I've had difficulty maintaining friendships. I'm able to make friends really, really easily, but holy shit, when it comes to maintaining friendships, I've got real issues with that. And up until very recently, a few months ago, I was constantly begging for people to stay in my life. People that were not serving me, that were not good friends. And I think it's through my most recent friendship with my best friend, Alex, that I learned what a good friend is supposed to be and how that's supposed to look. And when I became friends with her, I started examining past relationships and how people were acting towards me. And I've realized that it's kind of like, I guess, like having an abusive partner. Once you get someone that's healthy, not that I can relate, you start to realize that you're worth more and you're not going to tolerate less than you're worth. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's very, very true, because it's a lot easier to be alone than it is to feel lonely within a relationship, in my opinion. 5, understand that people are the way that they are, and you need to determine if you're willing to live with people's shortcomings or if it's more beneficial to walk away. I don't think I need to go in depth on that one. I think it says it all. I think that within relationships, sometimes people operate in a way that it's less favorable to, I guess, how we operate. And it's really difficult to alter who someone is to their core so that it further benefits you. So you need to be willing to accept people's shortcomings. And I know that's easier said than done. And there's a difference between accepting somebody for who they are, if they're a narcissist and they're ruining your life, or accepting someone as who they are in the sense that for example, my mom has a friend who will not stop talking. And when she gets her on the phone, she is on the phone for 3 hours, and it is draining. But she loves her, and she's her friend, and she's willing to accept what in her mind is a shortcoming because she appreciates her and loves her and is friends with her. 6, this is so important, and it's something that I've learned very recently. Learn to prioritize people who celebrate your wins. I never fully got this, and I started understanding this a few months ago when I became friends with my best friend, Alex. Every single time that something good happens, I tell her. And every single time she has the exact same answer. And I believe her wholeheartedly. She says, "Fuck yeah, bitch, as you should. As you should. You fucking deserve this." And after being in so many relationships with people who either didn't celebrate my wins or said nothing about them, or people who were fake happy for me, and you can tell, it is so refreshing and so beautiful to have a relationship with somebody who is genuinely happy for you when good shit happens to you. Number 7, this is so fucking important. Arguably one of the most important parts, at least of relationships, but maybe on this entire list of 30 things. Learn to love yourself and understand your worth. This will help you in the process of learning to weed people out. And although it means that you'll have less people in your life, always choose quality over quantity. Even if it means that for a while, you're alone and your only person is you. Because at the end of the day, I've said this before, people come and go. Coworkers, friendships, relationships, parents, family members, people come and go, but the only constant in your life is you. So build a meaningful relationship with yourself and love yourself. As cliche as it sounds, I don't give a fuck. Focus on that and place deep importance on that above anything else. All right, so this part is about mental health and autism. Number 8, if you're curious about getting diagnosed, don't let people in your life stop you. My autism diagnosis saved my life. I remember when I lived in Mexico a couple years ago, because I got diagnosed in December 2021. And I was interested after a couple years of my friend telling me, it's the autism in you. And after I'd done a little bit of research and I consulted my therapist and I asked her kind of what her thoughts were, she sent me kind of a form to kind of see where I was at. And it was kind of an autism diagnosis form. That wasn't what I ended up getting my diagnosis of, but I filled out the form and it came back as ASD, Asperger's. So while I was living here in Mexico, I found a specialist and I went and saw her and I got that diagnosis. And the first thing I did was call my friend Carla. And before going to get the diagnosis, she said to me, "Why are you going to get a diagnosis? You don't really need to add to your list of things that are wrong with you." And that was hurtful, to say the least. That being said, it is an underlying thing that regardless of if I got the diagnosis or not, it would still be something that is wrong with me. And after the diagnosis, it was like a breath of fresh air because I knew that it would lead me to better understanding my behavior and why I operate the way that I do. And I remember calling her to tell her, and her response was, Asperger's. Doesn't Elon Musk have that? Don't you need to be smart to have autism? Which leads me into my next part. Sometimes you're going to get a diagnosis, and while it might save you, the people around you might not react in the way that you'd hoped. And that's okay, because it doesn't say anything about your worth and who you are as a person. And you need to, and I'm saying this as kind of a message to myself, learn that you cannot control other people's reactions. You can only control how you react to situations. And just your reminder, self-diagnosis is valid. It's very, very, very hard to get a diagnosis, at least where I live in Canada. It's hard to find a psychiatrist, and it's expensive. It's just hard. So if you feel like it's beneficial for you to self-diagnose, then self-diagnose. Number 9, take pause, especially for ADHD and BPD people like myself who are very impulsive. It's important to give yourself time to calm down in order to react and communicate effectively. This has impacted me very recently. It impacts me a lot in day-to-day life, and sometimes it's very helpful to just get thoughts out on paper. I had a situation with a friend here recently, and I had drafted an entire text. I had planned out what I wanted to say to them, and I ended up just taking pause, chilling out, and just taking a couple hours to calm down, because I realized that I would not be able to communicate what I needed to communicate effectively in order to get the result or the desired outcome that I had in mind. That being said, it's something that I'm definitely still working on. Number 10, remember that nothing lasts forever. And this goes for good and bad. So act accordingly. Number 11, prioritize people that want to understand your brain better. And I keep going back to my friend Alex. When I became friends with her, she started researching ADHD and autism to better understand how my brain operates, because it was something that she was new to and she knew nothing about. And honestly, just taking 5 minutes to do research is really not that challenging. So prioritizing people that actually care about how your brain works is so important, because when we are mentally ill or autistic, our brains operate very differently than other people's. And it can be very helpful to have relationships with people where they understand better how your brain operates. Number 12, understand your triggers and plan accordingly. This goes for a wide variety of things. So a few examples, let's say for anxiety and for autism, in my case specifically. I know that I become very dysregulated and very anxious when I go to grocery stores. For example, Costco. Costco on a Saturday. Just not my cup of tea. And I know that it's going to trigger me into going into a shutdown or full down meltdown when it comes to autism. So in order to combat that, I will go to the grocery store or to Costco, whatever, on a weekday at a time where it is less busy. And I will wear noise-canceling headphones so that I can chill the fuck out about the noise, and there's less people, so I feel less anxious, and it's less likely that I'm going to have a shutdown. It's important to take time to identify what triggers you, because you can't really deal with and avoid or figure out how to work through triggers if you don't know what your triggers are. Number 13. This is a big one for people who deal with depression, and it's something that I'm learning recently. I've known it all along, but I'm only recently realizing how impactful it is. And that is, force yourself to get out of bed and open your blinds or your curtains. Allow yourself to have natural light flow in. Do not sit in a dark apartment, condo, or house all day. It will only exacerbate things. And I know, I get it, because on the days where I am fucking depressed and I want to just sit in the dark and fucking rot, the last thing that I want to do is open up my blinds and see outside. But every single time that I do, a couple hours later, I always end up feeling better. And I know that it's hard because sometimes when your brain works like that, you just want to fucking sit in that shit. Because if you are used to a life that is so chaotic inside of your head, it's all that you know. So forcing yourself to get outside of your comfort zone and potentially feel better can be very frightening. Number 14, make your bed every single day and clean your kitchen every single night without fail. This will transform your life in ways you never thought possible. Since I have been in Mexico, I have made my bed maybe once. I have thrown off my entire morning routine. I have thrown off my entire life, and holy shit, has it negatively impacted me. I have been making my bed every day for almost 2 years now, and it has literally transformed my life. I was at the gym recently, and this was in Mexico like a couple days ago. And when I was at the gym, I was talking to this guy, and when I first arrived, he had asked me if I had Instagram or TikTok. And I told him I had Instagram, and I gave him my Instagram. And about a week later, a couple days ago, he came up to me and he was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I looked at your content and I actually listened to the first episode of your podcast. And he was like, I really liked it. It's really good for mental health. And I just wanted to let you know that I started making my bed. And I said to him, have you been making your bed, or like, was it since you listened to the podcast? And he was like, no, since I listened to the podcast. And honestly, I think that it's really helping my mental health. And I had another follower who I mentioned in my first episode. His name is Marcus. And he would message me every single day with a photo of his bed made when he first started following me, because I talked about how transformative it was when I started making my bed. And I reached out to him a couple weeks ago. And I had asked him, have you been making your bed? I haven't really seen photos that you've sent to me of your bed made in a few months. And he was like, no, it's been a couple months since I've made my bed. And he was like, I want to send you something for your birthday. Like, let me know when you're going to be home. And I said, no, fuck that. Don't send me shit. I was like, here's what I want you to do. Tomorrow morning, I want you to go and wash your bedding and make your bed and send me a photo. If you do that, that will be the best birthday present that you can give me. And every day since, it's only been a couple days, but still, he has made his bed and sent me photos. It sounds so stupid, but it's the best way to start your day because it proves to you that you can be disciplined and do hard shit. And when I say hard shit, if you're listening to this podcast and you've experienced depression, you understand how hard it can be to perform seemingly simplistic tasks, like doing something like making your bed. And it just sets the tone for the day. The next portion I'm going to talk about is addiction. Number 15. Addicts often replace one addiction for another. So find something that's more healthy and then find a way to make it sustainable. What I mean by this is I had shopping addiction issues, and it was something that was not healthy and was not sustainable. Same with food addiction issues. It was not healthy and it was not sustainable. But I ended up channeling that into being addicted to going to the gym. And in the beginning, it was not healthy because I was overtraining. And when I say overtraining, I mean I was training minimum 4-hour days, minimum 5 days a week. So I was training minimum 20 hours a week and pushing insane volume, and it was not good for my body. But as I progressed, I understood how important it was to take rest days, and I started prioritizing rest and recovery. And that's how I personally found a way to make something that is an addiction more sustainable so that I can keep doing it in my life and it's going to impact me in a healthy and meaningful way. Number 16, shopping and spending money that you don't have on things that you do not need will not serve you. And if you're surrounded by people who place large importance on material items and their presence starts to impact your value system, run. I had a friend like that. And when I used to hang around them all the time, I started to shift in things that I wanted. And as opposed to wanting to complete goals, I started placing importance on material items, and it became so important for me to like get a bag. And if you guys don't kind of understand what that means, it's like kind of like a girl code thing of like having a designer bag. And I placed so much importance on that, and I started to put myself in debt That being said, I never ended up getting a bag, but put myself in debt to kind of match my lifestyle to align with theirs. And it got to a point where my value system started shifting, and I started to place importance and prioritize things that were never important to me. So I ended up creating distance because having that shift in my value system was not benefiting me. It was only exacerbating things. Number 7, eating 8,000 calories in 10 minutes isn't normal. Healing your relationship with food is the key to you feeling more regulated and less shackled. When I first started tracking macros about a year ago, I had no fucking idea how much food I was consuming. And I had no idea that I was still deeply in the throes of my eating disorder because it had shifted from anorexia to binge eating. And I was under the impression that because of the fact that I was eating, that I was healed. And I, in fact, was not healed. And taking time to improve my relationship with food has been one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my life, because if you have struggled with an eating disorder, you can understand and relate to how consuming it is. So prioritize creating a healthy relationship with food. Number 18, you quickly will learn who your people are in early recovery. Whether that's recovery from an eating disorder, recovering from gambling, specifically in my case, recovering from addiction. I was under the impression that I had like 30 friends. And as soon as I got sober, first of all, none of my friends came to visit me in rehab, any of the times I was in rehab. But what I realized is after I left and I placed boundaries with people where I said, listen, like I'd like to hang out with you, but you can't drink or smoke around me, I realized who my real friends were. And shocker, it was only like 2 people. That being said, were they real friends considering the fact that they still never visited me in rehab? Not particularly. And what I will say is I am no longer friends with these people. But it took me a good 12 years to figure it out. Number 19, recognize that it takes years to rebuild the trust that you destroyed in active addiction. When I was a drug addict, I would steal from my mom and gaslight her constantly and steal from her in order to fuel my addiction. And in early sobriety, probably for the first 5 years, it took a really long time to get to a point where if she had something go missing, she automatically blamed me. And it took a lot of patience, but more than anything, it took a lot of time to rebuild that trust within that relationship. But it is worth it. And it's something that you have to prepare yourself for in early recovery, because when you have spent years undoing trust in someone, it's not going to come back easily. It's going to take years to rebuild that trust again, and that's okay. And you have to evaluate if you're willing to take the time to rebuild that trust in order to keep those relationships. Okay, now we have reached the portion of food and nutrition / fitness portion of the episode. Number 20, be careful about the content and information that you consume about food and nutrition, and do your own research. There is so much misinformation in the fitness and nutrition space. It is wild. And you'll have people that you look up to that are inspirational to you, for example, influencers, peddle you things that are not going to benefit or serve you. And a great example of that is AG1 greens powder. I have learned about what a fucking scam it is through a friend of mine, Tony. He runs a podcast called Fitness Stuff for Normal People, along with a girl named Mariana. And Mariana on Instagram is Mariana's Pantry, and Tony on Instagram is Train Bloom. And both of them are 2 people that I have come to learn to trust, because their whole goal and the whole premise of the podcast is making things more accessible for people, easy to understand, and backed by science, so that you're actually getting information that's going to benefit you without them trying to sell you something. Number 21, there is value in being the dumbest person in the room, in the same sense that there's value in being the smallest person in your gym. And I learned that, and I've been learning that since July 1st. I had been wanting to switch gyms to the gym that I'm currently at, called 613 Lift, and it is a private bodybuilding / powerlifting gym, as opposed to a commercial gym like Anytime Fitness where I was before. And although it is very challenging to feel inadequate, the ability to learn from the people around you and soak up their knowledge is something that should be prioritized as opposed to trying to look like you're the best. Number 22, get a coach. It takes out the guesswork and helps you figure out how to reach your goals. I learned this through becoming a coach, how much I desperately needed a coach, because I am so fucking confused about my goals and what I want to do, and I just need someone to take out the guesswork so that I can just go on autopilot and get shit done. That being said, sometimes you're not in a place financially where you're able to afford a coach, and that's okay. So do what you can in the meantime, but when the time comes, if you want to progress and get to your physique goals, it's important to hire a coach. Number 23, contrary to popular belief, because of mainstream media, building your dream physique takes years, not weeks, not months, years. So be patient. You cannot undo the damage that it took you years to get to in a matter of months. You see this all the time with people selling programs for like, get shredded in 6 weeks, 6-week abs. It's just not realistic and it's not sustainable. You need to realize how long it really genuinely takes, and you also need to learn to fall in love with the journey. And although it's hard and it's not a linear process, it's something that you have to be okay with because it just takes so much longer than you ever think it's going to. Even if you are taking steroids, even if you have nutrition on lock, sleep on lock, training on lock, you have a coach, and everything is perfect, it still just takes a long fucking time. It takes a really long time to build muscles and to shed fat. And once you go through the process of bulking, then you have to cut. And once you cut, it depends how you cut, but if you're doing it sustainably, you can minimize muscle loss. But if you're doing a very quick cleanup phase, you're going to lose a lot of muscle. It takes time. It just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of prolonged effort, discipline, and consistency. So learn to be, one, okay with that, but more importantly, two, learn to fall in love with the process. Number 24, stop comparing yourself to others, because comparison is the thief of joy. I think that was something that Theodore Roosevelt said. It's very hard, especially with our day and age and how attached we are to our phones, to social media, the fact that we're looking at influencers. It's very difficult to not compare ourselves to other people, but there's beauty in your physique. Everybody is vastly different. We all have very different genetics. So even if you were to take somebody who is your frame, who has the same kind of ratios that you do, and you go on the exact same food and meal plan that they're on, the exact same sleep schedule, the exact same water intake, the exact same training, you're still not going to look exactly like that person. So remember that there's beauty in your physique, because your physique is different from anybody else's. Number 25. Talk to people at your gym. It will become your safe space, and it will be there that you'll find people whose value systems align really well with your own. And number 26, prioritize flexible dieting. For extreme rigidity when it comes to food consumption will only hurt you in eating disorder recovery and make you regress into disordered eating habits and tendencies. It's hard, right? Because specifically for my goal as somebody who wants to be a bodybuilder, I realized that I would never be able to do a show because I just didn't want to get to a point where I was so rigid in how I was eating that it would make me go back into, not make me go back into, but like made me regress further back into eating disorder tendencies. So it's something that I've had to be very mindful about because my biggest priority when it comes to nutrition is repairing my relationship with food. This last part is about goals. Number 26, align yourself with like-minded people who are driven. It's important to determine who has big dreams versus people who are taking action steps on a daily basis that align with their goals. Because people who have big dreams who do not action their goals will drag you down and will prevent you from moving forward in your journey to progress and get closer to achieving your goals. Number 28, when you feel stuck, go into nature and change your atmosphere. Change your surroundings, change your environment, because it will help you reframe your mindset. That was the whole purpose of this trip, was to change my environment because I needed to reframe my mindset and kind of clear my head and remember what was important to me. I find that this is so beneficial for me in a variety of ways. I go for walks in nature probably 5 days a week and go on hikes because it helps me reframe my mindset. Number 29, so important. Look forward to being uncomfortable, for it is through discomfort that we grow. And I saw something that I really loved recently on social media, and I forget the guy who said it, and I forget exactly the quote, but it goes something like this: the magic you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. And it is so true. And I've gotten to a point where I've become more disciplined in day-to-day life, and it's led me to just constantly doing things that I don't want to do. And it is so fucking rewarding on a short-term basis because it tells me that I can do hard shit. But most importantly, it involves me actioning daily steps that I need to take towards my goals. Number 30. This is so important, and this is the biggest reason why I came to Mexico. Sometimes, because of the way our brain operates, because of day-to-day stresses, we forget why we're doing the things that we're doing. And it's important to remember your why. Remember why you're doing the things that you're doing. Remember why you have the goals that you have. Because if you forget it, it's going to make it significantly hard to action it. It's important for me specifically to remember my why. And my why is that in 5 years, I want to buy my mom a house and move her back from Ecuador back into Canada so that I can spend the remainder of her life with her. This goes for anybody. It's so important to remember why you're doing what you're doing because it takes a really long time to achieve goals, especially things that are long term. And it can feel as though you're not progressing at all because progress and anything in life is not linear. So when you regress in your goals or when you regress in your life, it can feel like you're so much further away from achieving what you want to achieve. But you need to remember why you're doing things because it will help you reframe your mindset and shift and go back into doing the things that you need to do in order to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. I think that's it. I think that is the end of the 12th episode of 10 Years in Bed. That was 30 things that I've learned by 30. If you are watching on YouTube, if you could hit that subscribe button, if you could hit the like button, if you could comment and share things that you liked about the episode, things that you hated about it, help me improve. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could just take 20 seconds and give me a 5-star rating, it helps get the podcast out to other people. And I would really, really, really appreciate it. I think that's it. I hope everybody has a lovely day. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I hope that you've learned something through this episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.